The government admitted this happened. Then it disappeared. I don't mean redacted or corrected. I mean erased. Records were changed. References were removed. Public discussion just quietly stopped. This is the story of something that was once officially acknowledged and then methodically wiped from history. At first, there was no secrecy at all. Officials confirmed the event publicly. News reports mentioned it clearly. Documents existed, memos were written, and official statements were released to the press. At the time, it was treated as a real, verifiable event. Newspapers referenced it. Researchers cited it in their work. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't denied. It was, for a time, simply accepted as fact. And then, something started to change. The acknowledgement, once clear and public, began to fade away. Years later, independent researchers and historians began to notice something strange. Mentions of the event started disappearing from official sources. Old reports became incredibly hard to find. Official government websites stopped referencing it entirely. Archived web pages that once held the information suddenly returned error messages. Documents that once existed were suddenly listed as missing or no longer available. They weren't publicly destroyed in some grand gesture. They were just no longer accessible. There was no announcement explaining the change. No correction was ever issued. The silence was quiet, but it was definitely intentional. Now, we have to remember, history doesn't just vanish on its own. Records don't simply disappear into thin air. For something to be erased from the official narrative, someone has to actively remove it. Files must be altered. Digital indexes have to be adjusted. References and other documents need to be deleted. This requires a concerted effort, and it requires approval from somewhere up the chain of command. The few experts who noticed these gaps began to raise questions. Why would you remove something that was already admitted? Why erase the record instead of just explaining it or recontextualizing it? The choice to erase, rather than to clarify, is a significant one. It's crucial to understand the difference between secrecy and erasure. Secrecy is about hiding something from the very start. It's a lock on a door that was never opened. Erasure, on the other hand, happens after the truth is already known. The door was open, people saw what was inside, and then someone slammed it shut and tried to pretend it was never there. That's what makes this so much more dangerous. Erasing history doesn't just hide a few inconvenient facts. It fundamentally reshapes collective memory. It changes what future generations are allowed to know, creating a sanitized, alternate version of the past. And once those records are altered, accountability disappears right along with them. When an event is erased from the record, a whole host of questions are left permanently unanswered. Who was affected by this event? What were the real-world consequences for the people involved? And if it was important enough to acknowledge in the first place, why was it so critical to later deny its existence? Without the original records, we're left with no clear answers. And without answers, the mistakes of the past can, and often do, repeat themselves. This isn't about creating panic or pushing a conspiracy. It's about a fundamental need for transparency. Because what is removed from the record today cannot be learned from tomorrow. But even the most thoroughly erased events leave behind traces. Think of them like ghosts in the machine. There are unexplained gaps in historical timelines. There are broken references in order, untouched documents that point to a source that no longer exists. There are unexplained changes in policy or procedure that seem to come from nowhere. Historians call these quiet absences. These holes in the narrative are incredibly revealing because they show us exactly where something once existed. And that's a powerful reminder that history isn't just what's written down. It's also about what's missing. The blank spaces tell a story all their own. So, the government admitted this happened, and then they erased it. Not everyone noticed the change, but some did. And the very act of removal tells its own chilling story. Because when history is deliberately altered, the truth doesn't just disappear forever. It waits. It waits in the gaps, in the quiet absences, and in the memories of those who refuse to forget. Thanks for watching.